All right, welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, my tag team partner, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, man?
Deremy, man, I'm excited to be here today. What's going on, man? I know we just recently did an episode, but it's always good to be with you in here, brother.
Absolutely, and we have a special guest. This person's one of our favorite guests because it was really one of the
Yeah,
most memorable episodes for us, Jose, and one of the ones that really touched us was when
yeah,
I can't believe it's going on. Pretty soon it'll be 2 years since he was on last. It's time is
yeah.
flying, but this person wrote one of the best books I've ever read. I came as a shadow, with John Thompson, and is an unbelievable writer for ESPN. He's a producer, does so many things. Give it up for Mr. Jesse Washington. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yo, appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, Deremy, he jumped on, and I was like, man, that's a nice shirt. And he was saying he felt like it was fitting for the show, so I appreciated
Yeah, I
that.
feel like that's how we got together in the first place, so I had to run it back a little bit. And
Right?
any chance I get to rep Coach Thompson
Yeah,
for the audience that understands and appreciates it, such as yourselves, I'm gonna do it.
Absolutely. Now, the first time I saw that shirt was when Doc Walker, after
mm,
Coach passed, and
mm.
they'd had like the tribute, and he was wearing that on his Twitter page and everything. And I'm like, that's a great shirt, man. I want one of those. So
Yeah.
I might be hitting you up after the episode to be like, where can I get
What's the
that?
link for that? Yeah.
Yeah.
The link is J Dub, and if I have your size, I got you.
I
Nice,
appreciate that. I
nice, nice.
appreciate that. But, you know, Jose, I'll be straight up. Jose was down for the count in September. He had, little surgery. So he actually was the one who let me know he was off work. So,
Yeah,
we all know that vibe where you're off work and you got nothing to do but time and just watching TV and resting up. And he texted me about this E60 documentary, the crossover. And I was like, no, I didn't even hear or see anything about that. And then that's when he was like, no, Jesse was all over that. Let's try to get him on. It's like, so I watched it. He had already seen it. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. So we wanted to ask you, how did you get involved with that project?
Yeah, man. So first and foremost, shout to the director of the crossover, which is the ESPN hip hop and sports documentary. His name is Julian Gooden. Just a talented brother, one of us of the culture, and he did a tremendous job. And I was thankful to be included. ESPN has a lot of great producers and talented people, and I think I've sort of made a minor mark on our organization in terms of just being a real hip hop dude, you know, who goes back to the days of me actually DJing on actual turntables, which are in the background as we speak.
nice.
You know what I'm
There you
saying?
go.
We got a little 1200 action. And so some folks were like, "Hey, man, we're working on this project. Can we consult with you and, just have a conversation?" Me and Julian had a conversation. We hit it off. Really, it's all him, man. I'm not taking any credit for the brilliant vision that he executed. I was able to give him a couple of nudges here and there. So I'll take y'all behind the curtain a little bit about,
There you
Okay.
go.
why. So I was surprised at how much I was featured in the doc. But as a director myself, the style of documentaries now, we don't have a narrator, right? So
Right.
it's all comes through the interviews. And when you direct a documentary, and I learned this from my documentary filmmaking mentor, his name is Marquise Daisy, a great director and producer for the 30 for 30 franchise, has done all kinds of docs from the ESPN's And One joint to Rand University, the great Randy Moss joint,
Yes.
to the Vic doc that just came out. He's working on the Kaepernick joint right now. And so Marquise taught me that, hey, man, I can get somebody to come in and talk about exactly what I need to be talked about in order to move the narrative of this film forward. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
So Julian, being the talented director he is, follows that approach. So toward the end, he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna bring you in at the end." And I've been around the block a few times with this sports and hip hop thing. I'm gonna go back and send a shout to my man Chris Wilder, a journalist who was editor of the Source Sports magazine. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
My man David Cummings, who's over at CBS now. These guys were doing the Source and Sports 20 years ago, and I was writing for them and in that mix. So the director of the ESPN joint was like, "Yo, let me bring you at the end and do an interview." So I knew that he had to hit certain points in order to explain things to the audience. So basically, man, he was just tossing me underhanded. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was knocking him out. Um, and that's how I got to be in that documentary and got a surprising amount of screen time. But I'm really grateful for it, and it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, it's streaming on ESPN Plus right now. Probably still popping up on the broadcast airwaves. The crossover, John, narrated by Busta Rhymes, featuring
Yeah.
Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, and on and on and on. Man, it's a great film.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you were right. Cause I'm watching this and Deremy mentioned, man, I was kind of like, I was laid up for a little bit. So, but I guess the first time you came on, I must have missed that first appearance. And then the second time you came on, I was like, wait a minute. Like the dude he looks familiar, man. Then you came on again and then you were talking about the DJ stuff. And I remember you had mentioned that to us that you were doing that in college before when you went on with us last time when you came on and talked about Coach
Yes,
Thompson's
sir.
book.
I'm proud
So
of it.
yeah, so I was like, and they had the picture up. I was trying to get the picture of you, man, but
That was if I could just say, man, that was one of my personal highlights because I didn't know that he had that picture. He just snatched it up off the internet.
even
So
better.
quick. And the reason I posted it was we just celebrated the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and I
Right.
was privileged to me and my man Mark Spears, the great NBA Hall of Fame NBA writer for ESPN and Andscape. The Black Journalist Convention was down in Birmingham, and it fell almost exactly on the anniversary. I was like, "Yo, Mark, let's throw a little set. Wednesday night, first day of the convention. Folks will be in town. Let's throw a party." He was like, "Cool, let's do it." And I was like, "Yeah." So I'm trying to DJ, and I got to like as a DJ, there's a couple of ways where you could get busy. Your technical skills could be off the charts, or your song selection. So, I don't have a DJing is like an instrument. So I may be a little rusty, but I know I could outthink y'all. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna play one song from every year of hip hop in order from
Nice.
1973 until now. And that was the joint. So I posted a picture of me DJing in 1987 as I was promoing this party. Boom, boom, boom. Julian snatched it up and put it up in the documentary. I was like, oh man, that was a real life moment. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, that was cool. But yeah, like I said, like, and you mentioned it too, man. You and Deremy also, like you did a great job on that documentary, and the way the documentary opened up, like I really appreciated, and it was asking like it flat out, like what does the culture mean to you, right? And I wanted to ask you that right off the bat as well. Like I know what it means to me, I know what it means to Deremy, but to you, Jesse, what does the culture mean to you?
Wow. Well, thanks for asking. I'm honored to answer that
Right.
because it's a part of my identity, and it's hard to describe to young people now where hip hop is mainstream and accepted by everybody, embraced by everybody, come one, come all, that when I was a kid, I'm 54, so I'm born in 1969. So in the 70s, when hip hop is just starting to get going, and in the early 80s, when I'm a young man and then turning into a teenager, it was so disrespected and such an outsider culture. But once you were a part of it, you understood this is the young people's movement of this time, and this is going to change the world. And it was something, it's a famous quote from KRS-One, hip hop is something you live. And so if you live with participating in the culture, be it as a DJ or as a fan or as a MC, and then there's a mindset and a attitude that came along with it. And really, it was largely the same as and exemplified by Coach John Thompson in the 80s, which was this was a time of Black oppression and neglect, and under the guise of, oh, everything is fine now, y'all got equality, but we really didn't. And hip hop articulated that in a very powerful and revolutionary way, the same way John Thompson articulated it in a powerful and revolutionary way. So those things came together. So what the culture means to me is a springboard and a gathering place for people of my generation to come together and insist upon our rights as Black people, our rights as young people, and to express ourselves in a creative way, whether that's on the turntables or the microphone or the basketball court.
Exactly. What about you there? I mean, I know I'm kind of hitting you with this, like kind of springing this on you, but I definitely want your take on that as well.
No, I think Jesse put it eloquently. For me, the culture is everything that he said, but also, uh, and people who have listened to us,
Right.
they've heard me say it before. It's the driving force on we're telling our stories. We're telling our stories, and and I've told many people this when it comes to myself, my family, and the culture. As long as I'm still living, breathing, you don't get to write the last word on me. And to me, that's what's very important because, like Jesse said, if you look at it, and even a lot of times, you look at mainstream pop culture in the 80s, everything was fine. It's all good. Hey, that was the civil right, the 60s. We got the Civil Rights Act of 64. So now we're good. It's over. You're not slaves anymore. Hey, everything's cool. And it wasn't. And it was this active oppression against blacks, against gays, against anybody, minorities in general, that was happening, but people wanted to overlook that. And I remember looking in history books and seeing everything and acting like, oh, that's all fine and everything's cool now. And to me, it's like, no, you got to really hear the story. You got to really hear what's going on. So to me, it's telling that story about the oppression, but also telling the story about, hey, look at how far we've come. Look at all these great examples of everything happening to us, but we're still moving forward as a people, as a community. And that's what the culture means to me.
Man, that's amazing and so many good points. And, telling our stories in our own way from our vantage point. And I think prior to hip hop, we had to assimilate into this mainstream. It wasn't like where everybody had access to social media. So if you wanted to broadcast a wide message, you had to go through some of these
Right.
established channels. And for us as Black people, we had to get in there and you adapt in order to be accepted and to progress. And hip hop didn't do that. Even in music, the biggest Black artists had to go mainstream. Look at how Whitney Houston's music sounded in order
Mm-hmm.
to become a superstar, or Michael
Yep.
Jackson. Even though it's still Black music, it had to take a little bit of the edge off it. And you'll notice that I'm giving a lot of props to a lot of people who really influenced me and have given me opportunities and inspiration along the years. And one of them was a brother named Daryl Dawsey, who was a great and is a great Black journalist. And he had a column in the Detroit News. I was fresh out of college, this is 92. And the title of the column was Buck Wildin'.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
WHYLIN apostrophe. And Daryl had a picture of himself at the top of the column in a b-boy pose. And that was when a light went on. I had worked for the Source magazine and stuff like that. Vibe hadn't started yet, But here he was in the Detroit News, a mainstream white institution, being himself as a hip hop dude. I didn't know who he was. I had never met him, but I was like, there is a Black man my age being a Black man of my age in print,
Yeah.
and it's hip hop. And I was like, and that turned a corner for me. Then I was like, man, I want to do what he's doing. So shout to Daryl Dawsey for inspiring me. We later got to work together. We're friends to this day. So hip hop and the culture allowed me to be myself and gave me the courage to be myself at an Associated Press. And now at an ESPN, where they've come to value it and elevate it, like the movie that you're calling about today.
No, and just I'll say this real quick, to you, Jose. We were talking before on air with Jesse about where our show has been. I'll never forget the conversation we had before and after when we were with the previous studio and we had that first meeting. And I said, even the culture that goes to you.
Yeah.
And guess what? When we're talking about whatever athlete, Roberto Clemente, whoever, I want to hear that from your standpoint.
Right.
Not that other people can't say it, but I want to hear you. What did Roberto Clemente mean for you growing up Puerto Rican in a Puerto Rican family? So that also extends to you as well. Like I want to hear those stories from you. I didn't want to hear it from someone else saying things that doesn't have a connection to it. Or maybe they
Right.
heard from one person one time and then now they're running off and telling it. So I think it's important for everybody to be able to tell those stories and tell their history the right way.
No, absolutely. Yeah, because there's so many different vantage points. There's no like one way to look at it. It's like it's personalized, in my opinion. Like, what does it mean to you? Like, what did it do for you? And I think both of you kind of just touched on it exactly, like what I wanted to hear. Right when I asked that question, it's just like we can give a mainstream answer and just be like, oh, it means this and this and that. And I wanted to know what it meant to each of you. So I appreciate you both answering it that way.
And a side note, hip hop was created by Black and brown people. Puerto Ricans were there at the very beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
there is no hip hop without the contributions of our Puerto Rican sisters and brothers.
Absolutely.
Let that absolutely be known.
Oh, I have, man, like, I'm 44, and I got like the OGs who I remember like were breakdancing, teaching me how to do that. And I was talking to Deremy about this and about the documentary, and I was like, man, like I know they had Fat Joe on, and they had a lot of clips, but I was like, we were there too, 100%, man. And he was like, oh yeah, we were talking about that on the side, and I appreciate you saying that too, because that's 100% true. And there is no culture, there is no hip hop with all our contributions. And again, I just think it comes from it's not a race or ethnicity thing. It's about an environment thing and where we all came from. So 100%. I appreciate you saying that.
But I have a question, because this could lead to some, maybe not, but some debate. For you, Jesse, when you think of a team that really defines that merger of hip hop and sports, what's that first team that pops into your mind?
Ooh, wow. Okay. The first one is the Georgetown Hoyas.
Okay.
1000%. Early 80s, unapologetically black, up on you. Their whole attitude was aggressive and uncompromising, and you might catch an elbow if you stepped in a little too close. You know what I'm saying? So by far, plus they had the ill Nikes that we were like, yo, how do I get some of those? Like, we wanted those.
Yeah.
And so, and then they were led by, I mean, if a coach ever came close to being an MC, it was John Thompson. He was the smartest, most well-spoken, best vocabulary. People would try and trip him up in the interview. He'd flip it around on them, and so for me, far and away, that's number one. I think the Mets with Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden were pretty hip hop, because you had two brothers, young black men, being themselves out there, striking cats out and hitting home runs. And then I would also go on to say that, I mean, obviously it's easy, but the credit has to go to the Fab Five at Michigan. UNLV, the Running Rebels with Larry Johnson and them.
Oh, yeah.
Brother, your best player has a big old gold tooth in the front. That's hip hop.
Right, part in the middle of his head. Yeah.
Part in the middle of his head, you know what I'm saying? Miami Hurricanes back in the day, just with the whole swag and the attitude and the outlaw image. Those are the ones that come to mind. What about y'all?
Jose, you go first.
You want me to go?
First.
Yeah. You mentioned, and I never thought of the Mets, and that's a really good point. Yeah, because I go to those same teams, right? Miami, Georgetown, UNLV. I remember growing up, and I remember you had a UNLV jacket. You were a man, even like Georgetown stuff, like all that gear. Even folks look at like those 70s Raiders, like, you know what I mean? Like all those teams that when you had that apparel, it meant something. It meant like you were part of like that movement that was going on. But when I was growing up, it was Fat Five. You know what I mean? Like, as much as it pained me to look at a Michigan team like that, being an Ohio State fan, I'm looking at Deremy. He knows he knows I was going with this, but it's just, it was me out there. You know what I mean? Like, and I appreciated watching them and them not being scared, unapologetic for being themselves. And Jalen Rose mentioned in the documentary, I remember watching him talking about it for the Fat Five documentary that ESPN did as well. And he was saying, like, when he was growing up where he was playing, it was not a white audience. And then he goes to Michigan and it's all a white audience. And I was like, man, like that had to be such a shock for him, for them, all of them, and that's those little things that we don't really think about when we see college athletics and, moving so far and so forth to like the pros and stuff. So,
who it was a shock for? It was a shock for white audiences. It was a shock for the white media.
Yeah.
That was the shock. It was a shock for when Georgetown showed up with the all-black team. And so, but that is a great point, that Jalen and his teammates are coming from their environments, at least Jalen, because Weber went to Detroit Country Day.
Yeah.
No disrespect, he's still one of us. But you got to bring your authentic self, man. And that's what hip hop taught us and allowed us to do in a new generation type of way, man. We're bringing our unapologetic, authentic self wherever we go. And I still feel that way, even I'm gonna be 70 years old and still hip hop. That's the plan.
Right, and my pants are going to sag a little bit always. Like that's how I feel, and I'm not talking about like but
You didn't go to the tight pants era, Jay?
nah, I couldn't
No,
do that.
Isn't
never.
it? It's no, it's coming back. The space in the
I
trousers is
I
coming
know,
back now a little
I
bit.
It's
know.
awful.
Yeah, I couldn't
That's
do that.
awful. That's
Yeah, and
awful.
and I was thinking that too, like how like fashion like always like comes back and like evolves, and I was just kind of getting ready for this episode. I was like, man, like I again like we mentioned starter jackets and like the bucket hats. I remember having that, and and the baggy clothes, and then how it switched over to like the jerseys and then the button downs, and then now everybody's like nice and fitted, and it's crazy, man, how things
But
evolve
this,
and
but
change.
this, and it got fitted, and then it's opening up again. And
Right.
they do this in order so we got to buy new stuff.
Yeah.
That's why they do
That's
it.
all they
You
do.
know, and so it makes me mad. And so I usually will hold on to the old trend until I start to feel goofy in it, and
Right.
then I'll be like, oh, all right, let me.
I'm with
So
you.
That's how I
I
am too.
still, like I still remember, and I have children who are young, cool people, and so like my oldest son was in high school, and I remember he had this friend. His name was Max Miller. He's a cool white dude, Max Miller, ill name, be out there hooping. He could rap, and he had on these slim sweats. And I was like, ooh, what is that? Oh,
Yeah.
next thing you know, like a couple years later, my sweats is baggy. I'm like, man, I feel a little bit stupid right now. Let me
Yeah.
slim this down. Now they're getting big again, man. So it's but I mean, how do you guys feel? So all these things that we're talking about, the fashion and the music and the hats and the sneakers, now like everybody has it. Like you got this some of these jokers running for president on the side that begins with R. Out here at campaign rallies trying to rhyme and
Hmm.
whatnot. So how do you guys feel about our culture being so mainstream to the point that our sneakers, our style, our slang is being used by people who are not hip hop?
I kind of I'm pretty mixed on it, to be quite honest, because I feel like what I've seen, and especially I'll say he's not popular to say now, but since like Kanye, I liked Kanye gave a different. You could look at like we had gangster rap, and Kanye kind of made that shit, and I like that because I'm like we need to get a whole parameter of it, right? But then it becomes that it becomes people who it gets so popularized. I always tell people, and people who are younger don't get this. When I see like a Xfinity, like the big like corporation Xfinity, and they have X going to give it to you playing
Yeah.
like during, and I go, when that song came out, there's no way any company would have played that, let alone this multi-billion-dollar company. And you see these like white housewives like in this like suburban home, and like X gonna give it to you, and she's using Xfinity, and I'm like, what? And like people look at me, I go, when that song came out, there's no way that would have been
Yeah.
used in a mainstream commercial being played during like an NFL game. And I'm like, it's just so bizarre. And I'm like, it's just weird. And I'm not comfortable with it. So I kind of go mixed on it because a lot of people are just, it's losing that. It's losing that culture. I was listening to a conversation. I think Torre had on Michael Smith and Bomani Jones. I sent it to Jose
Yeah.
about like the history of hip hop and growing up. Yeah, like, and it was pre-internet and everything, but to know, being in Philly, to know what was going on the West Coast, and oh, that's slang out there, or oh, okay, that's how to get down with that. You listen to those records to know what was going on in Detroit or down in the South. I have family down south, and then we were going back and forth, like, oh, up East Coast, and they're like the dirty South, but we were kind of exchanging like lessons and notes because they're asking, well, what's this mean? And then I'm asking them, well, what's that mean? And I feel like that's getting lost now, where like, hey, the culture, now I can listen to somebody. I don't know where they're from. I don't know what they're saying a lot of times. So I feel like it's a mixed bag for me.
Yeah. It frustrates me, to be honest, because for a long time there, if I was listening to DMX, to your analogy there, me and your example, or if if I was dressed a certain way, like people, certain people would look at me and move away from me, cross the street, whatever they want to do, and I had to deal with that, and I'm not the only one in this call, right there. I had to deal with that, and for so long that we had to deal with that, and then now it's like it's okay to be that, if you're certain individuals that you can do that and get away with that and then like hop in and out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's where like the frustration for me comes in. And it's just like, no, like I'm not allowed to hop in and out of this. Like this is life. And for some people it's not. And I just think that's when my frustration comes in.
I'm super frustrated with it because of all of the disrespect and folks said it was not music. And what are you doing? Why are you spinning on your head? And
Yeah.
it's not art, so now to have people taking advantage of it bothers me. But I really made a resolution to myself to try to be more accepting and embracing, because also this is what we really wanted deep down. The mentality of oppressed people is really wild, and oppression can make you think in counterproductive ways. So we are influencing and leading mainstream American culture now, and the fact that young white kids, as they always have, but even now to a greater extent, are consider themselves part of hip hop is a win in a lot of ways. And it really, goes a long way as far as proving the value of the culture. So I've tried to chill out and not be a grumpy old man as much.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Jesse, all three of us, not to put words in y'all mouth, but love and study history and know that. And I think that's for me, like that's always happened and always will be happening, honestly, is, you look at it like, black music, oh, back in the 50s, like Little Richard and all these different Chuck Berry, whatever. Then Elvis comes along and then it becomes like now that's the biggest scene there. And I always get in debates with people about, hey, the Beatles, especially those early years, were copying black music.
Yeah.
And people call them the GOATs and the greatest. And it's like, I have a problem with that. Not that they weren't brilliant. Not that they didn't do a lot of great stuff. I don't want to take away from them. But that's on the backs of so many who didn't get that chance and had to just play at best the Chitlin circuit. And that was it. So to me, it was coming that way. You just see the trend. And that's what history always, it repeats itself. May be a little bit different, may shine a little bit, but it always keeps happening that way. And it's important for all of us, but especially if you have a platform, to talk about that, talk about like what Jose said. It's like, no, you can wear that and you think you're cool, but then if something goes down, I'm not a part of this. Like,
Yeah.
So then it's like, it's big to be like, no, I don't get a chance to take it on and off. This is me regardless. And I'm proud of who I am, but guess what? Then don't come over here trying to hop onto this culture and, do all those things. So
Yeah,
it's a you're right though, it's a weird balance because you do fight for mainstream and then you get there and you're like, what was I really, did I fight, did I really want this? Like I don't know if I wanted this. So it's a weird thing.
Man. Yeah. What's the thing that you, from your era of hip hop, that you still hold on to no matter what anybody says, you're still gonna rock with it?
Oh man, that's easy for me. Because we were talking about like the fashion and all that, and in my life, like I've transitioned a few times. You know what I mean? Like I can remember growing up, and I when Wu-Tang was coming out, and I was with the fatigues and all that stuff. Like I was a part of that. The Carhartt hoodies or whatever it was. And then, Puffy and Biggie and all of them had me trying to buy Versace, like, even though I couldn't do it, but I was trying to like look like that, and I was just, that was just me. Like I was always like evolving and stuff. I would say, and this is a conversation I know I've had with Deremy plenty of times, but it can be a mindset also. Like I try my best to look nice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean like in a suit. We can do that too, but I just mean like, I can have a pair of sweatpants or whatever, but I gotta have a pair of nice sneaks. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's just, I don't know if it was, I know it was the culture. Like, you know what I mean? How I grew up and that mentality. So for me, that's never going to change. You talked about being 70. I'm going to be 70 with a pair of nice kicks. Like I am like, and that's for me, never shifts, good or bad. I've definitely had those conversations with my girlfriend for sure, but for me, never going to change.
What about for you, Jesse? What's that thing that you're going to hold on to?
Playing my music loud in my vehicle forever.
Yeah.
forever. And I want y'all to know I'm here. I want y'all to know what I'm listening to, and so that's one thing. My relationship with sneakers has changed. because the game is just so watered down and saturated, and I refuse to
Yes.
be manipulated by these people. So, I'm never gonna have bummy sneakers ever, but I'm not gonna have the sneakers that such and such brand tells me are hot and are making scarce
Right.
artificially to make people think that it's a grail. Oh, like, how is it a grail if I could just go and buy it for however much money I want? So, but that's the one thing I'm gonna hold on to, man. I'm gonna be banging that music out the truck, and they're gonna be like, "What is wrong with that old man?" My kids be pulling up to the house sometimes, and because they drive, and we hear them coming, and then my wife will look at me and be like, "See what you did?"
Yeah.
Deremy, what are you gonna hold on to?
Definitely the loud music. I'll say that for sure. But I think honestly, what I'll hold on to, I kind of like alluded to it, is that cultural, like that, like geographically, like there'll still always be that thing of like, all right, like East Coast is like always going to be like that's me, and I've grown to respect. Before it used to be like heated arguments, like near fights with people about it. So like that's different now, but still like if it's from whether it's New Orleans, Houston, down south, Atlanta, I have respect, love for it. But I'm gonna always be like, but that's not me. That's you.
Good
Like I
point.
got family down in South Carolina, Atlanta. Like they love Outkast, love all like they. I mean, I heard Outkast so much for so long, I was almost had to like get cleansed from it because I'm like, all y'all play. I was like, that's all y'all hold on to is this Outkast shit. But I'll say like, there's that just I'm from the East Coast, and so when that gets brought up, that's mine. That's mine. Like
Yeah.
I take that claim for it. So I'll always have that, like regardless, even though it's gone global and everywhere, but East Coast, that's for me.
I'm with that. GOAT Philly rapper.
Ooh. For me, it's Black Thought.
Yeah,
I
you
knew I
gotta
liked
be.
y'all. I knew
That's
I
Gotta
liked
be.
y'all.
Gotta
that's my
be.
man.
Yeah.
He's in my top 5.
Yeah,
Period.
he's no
Period.
joke. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's the
yeah.
most underrated MC, I feel.
I mean, hey, I co-sign all that. He has got
Yeah.
to be, and there's a lot of great rappers out of
Yeah.
Philadelphia. Great rappers who I enjoy, but Thought is just turning into something totally different.
Yeah.
That man, I was listening to Common had a freestyle on the LA Leakers, and he killed it. It was great, but you could tell that Common came into that
Mhm.
with in mind what Thought did on Funk Flex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell he's like, okay, this is the lane that I'm going for, and he came close, but yeah. Shout to Thought, man. Thought, in my opinion, is top 5 of all time.
Yeah, he's amazing. And Deremy brought up Outkast, and one of like my most heated debates, and I love Outkast. And I remember one of my best friends, it was Mob Deep. I'm a huge Mob Deep fan, and it was Mob Deep or Outkast. And we were going back for hours, like we were going
Yeah.
back and forth. And Outkast did their
It's out.
thing, man.
It's Outkast. It's Outkast for the record.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
And I love it. No disrespect. Mobb Deep is great, but it's Outkast. Clearly.
Yeah, that's a slam dunk one. I'm like, ugh.
Nah,
I'm like,
that's not a slam dunk for me. But
that's a slam dunk.
Outkast is. I love Outkast stuff too. But you mentioned a few teams earlier. Some college, some pro. I was thinking about this the other day too, preparing for the show, and I was trying to think, and I think I understand which sport, but which sport, in your opinion, Jesse, like benefited the most from this shift to like hip hop and sports that combine?
Man, it's basketball, and I'm a hooper, so I'm biased.
Yeah.
But basketball is the most expressive. Basketball, you see the most of the player. Basketball, you have the most opportunity for individuality. Basketball is the sport that's closest to the essence of the hood.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the hood, and there is no basketball without the hood. Even when the hood was our Jewish brothers playing in New York City in the early 1900s, that was still hood. Concrete, you know what I'm saying? So basketball, the game arose from the same type of streets and environments that hip hop did. So, and now basketball is not the most watched sport, but it carries the biggest cultural impact. It sets the most trends. It sells the most shoes. it gets the most social media engagement, even though the NFL has magnitudes more people tune in to watch on television. So basketball, and we got to give credit, going back to John Thompson, we got to give credit to AI for bringing that shift in. And if it,
Yeah.
it probably would have been another player, but, Iverson forced the NBA to accept and adapt to hip hop. He forced them. He had to. They had to adjust to him, and he refused to be anybody but himself. And it's interesting because if you think about their style and their swag and their presentation, John Thompson is way different from Allen Iverson. But somebody said, and I agree with, I wish I could remember who said it, so this is not my original thought, that on some level, Iverson saw John Thompson refusing to be anything other than what he was and said, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that too. Even though they were totally different, even though John Thompson came from a very conservative type of era and AI was hip hop, and they loved each other. I was witness to that. Those two men loved each other.
Well, let me ask you this though, because I've had this conversation even with my dad around the time when your book came out. Now, when AI comes to Georgetown, John Thompson's at the later part of his career, of his coaching career. Now, when you hear the stories about when John Thompson was coaching Patrick, even Dikembe and Alonzo, he was really on top of it. And I'm wondering if AI would have been with a younger John Thompson, would he have given him that free reign as much? Or how much do you think it was John still, was the man, and still he was in charge, but he was an older John Thompson? Like, do you think if AI got him in the 80s, it would have been a little bit different?
No, and here's why. So, man, I got 4 kids. And I'm continually, even to this day, learning how to be a better parent. I'm learning more about the psychology of young people. I'm learning more about parenting individually and not having a blanket thing. And so a blanket approach to everything. So I think Coach Thompson was a better, more intuitive, smarter coach when AI came, which was toward 92. So he still had about another less than 10 years left in his coaching career at that time. So I don't think that it would have been different. And he understood something that is really special for a parent and for a coach. And he describes it very specifically in his book, John Thompson did, which is when you pay attention to something and bear down on it, and when you give a kid some space, so you have to know when not to know, even though you do know. And here's an example. AI told the anecdote. I think it was on the All the Smoke podcast.
It wasn't on. I know where you're going with it. Yep.
Yeah, and AI was smoked out, right? He said, man, I was smoking that weed. I know I reeked of weed. And Coach Thompson came in the room, and I was like, oh, man, he's going to come in here, and he's going to walk up to me and smell the weed, and I'm going to be in trouble. And Coach Thompson didn't call him out, right? Right? He stayed over on that side. Now, we all know that John Thompson knew exactly what was going on.
They say it on the show. They were like, you don't think he knew? And AI's like, nah. And then it was like, maybe he probably did know. He did know. They say it on the show.
I guarantee you he knew. And Absolutely. I guarantee you that he calculated that among all the factors in how to take care of this boy. Because that's what he was doing, man. He was taking care of this boy. That was in his heart. Like, let me get him to where, let's make sure that the world gets Allen Iverson. You know what I'm saying? And if that means that in this moment, I'm not going to roll up on you and throw a fit, but I guarantee you I guarantee you he let AI know at some point. And so he cared, he loved those kids, and he understood on a stupendously layered and complex level what was best for these kids. So I think that AI, if he would have been there in 1980, he still would have been able to be AI, and Coach Thompson still would have figured it out. But so I don't think that he got soft, not a bit. Okay. No, sir. No, sir. And I don't want him to reach down and smack me in the side of the head for saying otherwise.
All right. Very good point. Very good point. Nah. One thing, and Jose, you brought up the 86 Mets, and that's interesting as like a team that kind of helped, because I just remember hearing like those get mesmerized, and I'm like, that's so corny. But like, yeah, they did have Doc and Daryl, so I do see where you're going with that. But one thing I thought about, and I brought up to Jose, was what do you think about with Reggie Jackson in the 70s? Because I'm looking at him individually, but also the teams from Oakland and that three-peat earlier in the decade. And then we know what happens when he goes with the Yankees later on and how those teams, a lot of personality, a lot of edge. You know, the A's with the facial hair, the bright colors, and fighting in the locker room, fighting on the field, and really just a rebel group. What about Reggie Jackson and his impact on this merger of hip hop and sports?
Yeah, I think he was just a little too early. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if he had come along a little later, it would have been. But see, the thing is that you can't fake the funk with hip hop. And Reggie was just too old to be part of hip hop. The same way, I mean, let's face it, Michael Jordan is a pivotal figure in hip hop. But Mike,
Yeah.
you know,
He didn't like hip hop like that.
He didn't like it, and he wasn't part of the culture.
Mm-mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and no disrespect, he's still Mike.
Right.
If anybody gets a pass, it's him. You know what I'm saying? But from his style to his music, it really made me laugh on The Last Dance because they had all these great rap beats that were appropriate to the era. I Ain't No Joke and LL. It was like, man, Mike wasn't listening to no Rakim. Man, go back and find a issue of Vibe magazine with MJ and Chris Rock on the cover. Chris Rock is hip hop to the bone. He was asking MJ all these rap questions. He was like, I'm listening to Kenny Lattimore.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yep.
You know, so I think that Reggie wasn't really of the culture, so he couldn't really make that major contribution to the culture. You know, and MJ was a couple years later, but MJ said, man, I grew up in North Carolina. You know, we were listening to Lionel Richie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shout to my man with the shag. You know,
Yeah.
hello.
All right, so bringing it, we talked about we're ending it with music here. I know we're running out of time a little bit, but I wanted to ask you two questions. One question, a friend of mine asked me. We were at a cookout, and he asked me this question. We were just talking, whatever, and he asked me, "What's the one song that would never get old to you, that you can hear it every single day?" So I wanted to ask both of y'all, like, what's the one song for you, Jesse, that doesn't matter? It's just never. It's never going to get played out.
At one time, I would have said "Eric B. is President" by Rakim because I started DJing in '86, and for probably 15 years, I could rock a party with that record no matter what. It would get a reaction. And I remember the first day I played it at a party, I didn't get a reaction. I might have even got a bit of an exodus. And I was like, oh, snap. It was like, really, it hurt me in my heart. So I wouldn't say that. If there's one song that I could, you know, it would probably be a song from my youth that has all of the ingredients of it has to have, the beat has to just be captivating and the lyrics have to be on something. Man, if I had to choose, it's hard to come up with a new rap question.
Yeah.
One song that will never get old.
And I'll say this, I couldn't answer him that day.
Yeah.
Days later, I was like, Scenario. I would never get tired of Scenario. That's it for me.
That's not a bad one. That's not a bad one.
If I was gonna, but I'm tight. I was gonna ask for two because Scenario is one, but Pete Rock, CL Smooth, They Reminisce Over You. That's the other one for me. Those are my two.
You know, I might
never get old. Always when it's that, you know, I should find out who that Instagram guy is. I sent him some clips of him to you, Jose. When like the songs come on, he makes that face and he's like looking real deep. Like those are the two songs when I could be in the middle of a conversation and I hear him. I go, wait, and I'm just like listen, and they're like, what? I go, shh. I gotta listen.
Oh yeah, that comes on.
That beat, it's just over. It's like, all right, well, I'll talk to you in another 3 to 4 minutes, but I gotta listen to this. So those are my two. They never get old. I could hear them every single day, and that same emotion hits me.
I'm gonna have to tweet it at you pretty soon.
No problem.
Do that.
This is a high stakes question, but I'm really leaning towards choosing something from the Black Thought genre.
Won't go wrong there, man.
Not with us, especially. It might really be something that Thought, because I'm a word guy, man. Like that is my life revolves around words, and you know, he's second to none when it comes to them words. So I'm gonna answer that question and tweet it at y'all.
I told you, it took me a couple days. I couldn't answer them that day. So I'm glad. It's a tough question, especially someone who's so deep in, with the hip hop culture. So
I'm serious. I'm writing
it's
this down.
no,
I'm
Okay.
writing this down.
Okay.
Okay. Great question. Keep going.
Now, speaking of, because you mentioned for me in the beginning of the conversation about like documentaries, what's that? And if you can't say it due to whatever, I understand. But is there a documentary like that dream doc topic or subject that you would love to work on if you could?
Um, well, I will mention one that I'm working on, and I can come out and say it. Um, uh, there's a couple, but the one that I want to bring up is this. There's one high school in America that has more NFL Hall of Famers than any other school in America. They have 3 NFL Hall of Famers. No other high school has more than 2. And what's more, there's another Hall of Famer that's from their town and is really from this town, but just lived 5 feet over the line and went to the next door high school. And that place is Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Darrelle Revis just got inducted in the Hall of
and
Fame. So
Mike
that's
Ditka,
1.
right?
Mike Dick is
Mm-hmm.
2. Ty Law is 3. Tony Dorsett is 4. How does this happen? There's 9,000 people that live in this town. How does this happen? So I'm working with the good people of Aliquippa to tell their story
Nice.
and to explain it's really a miracle. It's an amazing, amazing place. So that is the doc. It's called Quip. And shout to Ty Law, shout to Revis, Mr. Dorsett, Mr. Ditka, Coach Mike Warfield, and all them young lions that they got out there with the Quips, #1 ranked in the state 4A. They about to come over to y'all side in a minute and get up in there. Bishop McDevitt, we coming for y'all.
Yeah.
So that's the doc that I'm working on right now, and I'm excited about it.
No, I can't wait. That's interesting, man. All those Hall of Famers, one little
Yeah,
school.
it makes. I
That
One
mean,
little
is,
school.
and then you think about like that Western PA. All those players that come out from there that are
yeah, all
not
those
from.
quarterbacks. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a hotbed for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot, man. Football is a thing out here, and so it's been cool to really get into that culture. And I live near Aliquippa, so to become
Nice.
to earn the trust and respect of this community, and for them to allow me to help tell their story is a big deal for me.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Um, anything else you want us to plug or you want to plug before we let you?
Yeah, man, real quick, and you're gonna hear my dog plugging from the other side of the door, but that's all good. We love dogs in the zone.
Oh,
Yeah. So recently, I had the privilege of helping Rich Paul write his autobiography. It's called
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky Me, and Rich is a really special guy, and the title is ironic. People are like, ah, man, you just got lucky, made friends with LeBron. But what Rich does in his book is tell the story of his upbringing on the east side of Cleveland, Ohio. And it stops when he meets LeBron. That's where the book stops. But by telling the story of struggle and perseverance and
It's
triumph,
interesting.
you see, where he got all the talents that made him, and Clutch Sports Group, the #1 agency in America right now, sports agency. And #2, it also shows how we as a society have a responsibility to look in these places for the talent that is there and just gets pushed to the side or not acknowledged. So Lucky Me, Rich Paul's memoir, just came out a couple weeks ago. I think that a lot of readers would enjoy it.
Okay, definitely. That's interesting. I like that viewpoint.
Yeah.
Stopping it before LeBron. And Rich Paul's a very interesting guy, so that's a book. I got a few books that I'm whittling through, and so that's I'm gonna get that probably the next couple
Appreciate you,
days.
man. Shout to all the readers out there. Deremy, you're a reader, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how we originally clicked up on I Came as a Shadow.
Yeah.
So shout to all my people who read. You can listen to the audiobook too. Rich narrates his audiobook. It's not a heavy lift. It's not a long read, and I definitely recommend it.
Oh, absolutely, man. And we are just so it's always a pleasure and a blessing to talk with you, man. And we're so proud of what you're doing and, spreading the culture and keeping that going and giving us just new and interesting stories all the time. So we're honored to have you on. We're proud of the work you continue to do. So we just thank you for that time, man. We really appreciate it, Jesse.
I'm honored to be here with you guys, man. Thank you.
Thank you. For Jesse Washington, for my tag team partner, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. Take care.
Peace.